Hey folks, welcome to episode 10. And in episode 10, I'm going to show you everything I've done to prepare this radio to work. So if you remember in the last episode, we were going to mount this transformer, and we've done that. And it's properly mounted. And we've got our replacement transformer right here. This is the first one I told you about. So everything is correctly wired and mounted. I've got all the wires run almost neatly. I still need to lead dress a little bit. I've had to do a little bit of work in this section. So here on this, on the detector tube, there was something called a double phone capacitor or condenser. Never heard of that before. It's actually listed right here in the diagram. And all it really is a pair of 0.002 capacitors. So I've replaced those. I've got those wired in correctly. I've also replaced another condenser that was here. And this is a 250 picofarad capacitor. Pardon my voice, I had a gig last night, so I'm not talking good. We've also checked the grid leak resistors, and they're all good. And we've got everything wired correctly. But we had a problem. It still wasn't working. So first thing I did was I had to check all my voltages. And I found out that my C+ was wired incorrectly in the power supply. I'm supposed to be getting a negative 45 volts here on these output tubes, the 71As, and I was getting a positive 45 volts. So I had to do a simple rework of the power supply, which I've done. So I was starting to get some noise out of the speakers, which is good, but I wasn't getting any radio to play. So what I did is I put a signal generator on the antenna right here, and I set it to 1,000 kilocycles, and I got out my ICO signal tracer. And I was able to trace the signal, through the first tube, the second tube, and the third tube, and I couldn't get from the third tube to the detector, right? So these are the RF sections. I wasn't able to get from the RF section to the detector, so the signal would die here. Couldn't get any further out the speaker. So I said, okay, so let's check. What are we going to check next? And with Brendan's help, we said, let's get our audio generator and set it to 1,000 hertz, and we connected it from the detector all the way back through the audio, and it was coming out the speaker. So from here all the way around to the speaker, we had audio. From here to the stage right before the detector, we had a signal. So we had obviously a problem between this stage right here, these two. So I checked all the wiring, made sure everything was wired correctly, redid a lot of wiring just to make sure it was neat, and still had no radio. So I had noise. I could play with this detector tube and get some noise, but still had no radio coming out. So if you think about what's in the section, let me put up the schematic and show you. So here's our schematic. So the area in question here was between the detector and this tube that's called 3R, which is really one of the 22 tubes. So I was getting my signal to here, dying here, and I was getting audio from here back. So what's left? There's only a couple of things here that are really in play, right? One is this 2 meg resistor, which is the grid leak. One is the coil. So the coil has a primary and a secondary. The primary comes in through the radio, right here. And we know that's good. I ohmed it out. But there's also another side to it, which is on the top of the radio. So let me show you what that is. Alright, so the coil that we're talking about is right here. And I took off this can, and you're not going to believe what I found. This wire that comes out, let me see if I can zoom in and show you. The wire that comes out of this coil and attaches to this tuning cap here is missing insulation. Let's see if I can get a flashlight on that and show you really closely what that looks like. You can see right there, maybe you could see it, but it's missing insulation. Maybe that's a better shot. And what was happening when that can was installed, this wire was shorting against the chassis, essentially. So this can goes on top of it. So this coil was shorting. That's why I couldn't get any audio out of this thing. So I removed the can, and we powered up the radio, and we got a radio. So let me do that, and I'll show you what it sounds like. Okay, so we have this thing standing up on its side. I've got a 8-ohm speaker right here, and we've got a long antenna on it. So it's about 40 feet. So we're going to plug in our power supply, which is working really well, by the way. And we're just going to check everything one more time. Okay, we're going to put some power on this thing. Fire in the hole. And it helps when you put in the output tube, which is right here. Okay, power's back on.
But that's what we did back in 2009. And that's where we've been. We've only been in this process of North for a few years now. It's
Sirius XM Channel 80. All guests join us by the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Up next, look, everyone's having bracket issues. Oh, that's green. Count the ways. It's next Sunday morning on ESPN Radio.
And just like that, this 90-year-old radio is back to life. So we're in really good shape. Let's turn the volume down. We'll turn the power off. So we're in really, really good shape now. This radio is working, and I'm really excited. I'm going to be able to tell my friend Keith that his grandmother's radio is finally working after all these years. So really, the moral of the story for me is, trace your problems out from end to end, right? So, as I told you, I was able to get a signal from here, and I was able to get audio from here. So you should be able to narrow it down into sections. So we have ourselves a working radio, which now I need to clean up underneath here, get this thing in good place, and we'll wrap up this thing. So the other thing I don't have is the speaker for this radio. So Keith is going to get that for me, and I don't know what shape that speaker's in, but I'm using an 8-ohm speaker here, which is working fine. So if the speaker happens to be bad, it can simply be replaced with an 8-ohm speaker, because this radio is actually in a cabinet. So I think we're finally on the right path here, thank God, and thankfully we found the problem. So I'm going to replace that wire on that coil, and then we'll put this can back on. And we'll put the bottom on this thing, and then we'll reattach the front plate, which I don't know if I showed you that. This is the front plate that goes on it, and I think I actually did show you this, and it's got this wood grain on it. And if you remember, I had rivets on there. I got a copper colored pen and just colored them copper. So this thing has been riveted on correctly, and this is going to look really nice when it's done. So we're in good shape here. So I'm going to put this thing back together, and the next video you'll see it all basically completed, and then I think we're done. So the power supply that we put together is working really well. All my voltages check out, so everything is exactly where it needs to be, and I'm really happy about that, because the power supply in itself is a project. So let me give you one last look at the power supply, and then we'll end the video. Okay, so this is the power supply that we put together, and if you remember, this is our C section, this is our B+, and this is our A. So the wire that I had to change for the negative voltage is right here. I had it going to the wrong side of these pots, these trim pots, but everything else is good. I have the 5-watt diodes in here. That's working well, and I've got my dropping resistors here, and this thing does not generate much heat, which is really, really good. I do have a fan in here, which I'm not gonna use yet. I want to let this thing run for a few hours and see how hot this thing gets. But our power supply is looking real good, and this thing really, really works well, nice and modular, and you can connect it and remove it as you need to. So happy to have a radio that plays, and I thank everybody that's helped me get there. I especially thank Brendan. In the next video, you'll see the final episode with the radio ready to close up and give back. So, have a great day, everybody. Thanks.